Okay, so let's jump right into this explainer. Picture this. You've booked the trip of a lifetime. It's an Atlantic odyssey setting sail from the very southern tip of Argentina, heading out to explore some of the most remote, pristine environments on the planet. You are expecting stunning glaciers, incredible wildlife, top-tier luxury, the whole shebang. But instead, the 150 passengers and crew on board the Dutch-flagged MV Hondius suddenly find themselves trapped in an absolute nightmare of a medical mystery. It's a situation so severe it actually triggered a Level 3 emergency response from the CDC and sent global health agencies into a total frenzy. Today, we're going to break down exactly how this happened, the terrifying science behind the outbreak, and the massive geopolitical fallout that's unfolding as we speak.
40%. I really want you to let that sink in for a second, because 40% represents the mortality rate of the specific virus strain suspected to be lurking on that stranded ship. When we're talking about global health threats, a 40% mortality rate is just staggering. To put that into perspective, it means nearly half of the people who contract this specific pathogen simply won't survive. So when a virus with that level of lethality pops up in a highly confined space, like say an 80-cabin cruise ship stranded off the coast of West Africa, the stakes literally could not be higher.
Part 1. A nightmare at sea, when a dream cruise turns deadly.
Diving right into the numbers, as of May 8, 2026, we can see exactly why international health officials are completely scrambling. Right now, there are 8 total confirmed cases and, tragically, 3 confirmed deaths. But it's the broader fallout that is truly alarming. This has escalated from a localized crisis on a ship into a literal global manhunt. Right now, 12 different countries are actively tracing contacts. Why? Well, because roughly 40 passengers actually disembarked from this ship before the outbreak was fully recognized, and health officials just don't know where they all are. They are in an absolute race against the clock to connect these dots. Moving on to Part 2. Tracing the deadly timeline. The route of the MV Hondius.
If we trace the timeline of this journey, the slow, silent progression of the crisis is pretty chilling. They set sail from Ushuaia, Argentina on April 1st. By April 6th, a 70-year-old Dutch passenger reported having a fever and a severe headache. Just 5 days later, on April 11th, he tragically passed away from respiratory distress. But here is the massive failure point. His body remained on that ship for nearly 2 weeks. It wasn't removed until April 24th when they reached the remote island of St. Helena. And crucially, that is the exact same time his wife and over 24 other passengers ended their trip and got off the ship. It wasn't until weeks later that his wife and a companion also fell ill, prompting the WHO to officially confirm the deadly Hantavirus outbreak on May 8th. That delay essentially gave the virus a massive multi-week head start.
Part 3. The Andes virus threat, a terrifying exception.
Okay, so what actually makes this so dangerous? It really comes down to the difference between a standard virus and this specific strain, which completely explains the CDC's Level 3 emergency response. Normally, a standard hantavirus is contracted by inhaling particles from infected rodent droppings or urine. And, importantly, it doesn't spread from person to person. But then we have the Andes strain. This subtype is found specifically in Argentina, which, you guessed it, is exactly where the Hondius started its voyage. The terrifying thing about the Andes strain is that it absolutely can transmit from human to human through close contact. So pair human-to-human transmission with a 40% mortality rate, put it inside the sealed, recirculated air environment of a cruise ship, and you have a total worst-case scenario. It totally rewrites the rules.
Part 4. Stranded crew and maritime risks, the human cost.
Behind all this terrifying science are very real people, especially the global maritime workers who literally keep the world's economy afloat. Right now, the Philippines Department of Migrant Workers is juggling 2 huge simultaneous crises. On one front, you have this invisible biological threat, with 38 perfectly healthy Filipino crew members trapped on the quarantined Hondius off the coast of West Africa. On the other front, you have raw geopolitical violence. Just days before this, 7 Filipino seafarers were injured in an Iranian drone attack on a container ship in the Strait of Hormuz. It's a stark reminder that the people working these ships are currently caught between deadly viruses and active combat zones.
You can really sense the frustration and desperation here. Those 38 crew members aren't sick, and they just want to go home to their families. But as the Philippines Migrant Workers Secretary Hans Leo Cacdec points out, they are totally gridlocked by necessary global health protocols. They can't just pack their bags and walk down the gangway. They're stuck in this massive bureaucratic holding pattern, waiting on coordination between the Spanish government, the WHO, and international health authorities to make absolutely sure they don't accidentally spark a new chain of transmission.
And on the flip side of that, you have the intense anxiety of the locals waiting on the shore.
Because the Hondius was denied entry to Cape Verde, it was redirected to the Spanish Canary Islands, specifically Tenerife. And the locals are furious. One local nutritionist called the ship's arrival the last straw, saying the residents feel completely ignored. The island is already navigating its own complex local issues, and a floating health crisis arriving at their doorstep feels like a breaking point.
Which brings us to Part 5, Tension in Tenerife, a destination on edge.
This whole public health emergency has basically acted as an accelerant for existing political tensions. The central Spanish government in Madrid essentially bypassed local Canary Island leaders who strongly opposed letting the ship arrive. And wow, that sparked an immediate backlash. You have port workers out there blowing whistles in protest, genuinely terrified for their own safety and demanding proper protective gear, and you also have political groups like the far-right Vox Party stepping in and drawing direct comparisons between the arrival of this infected vessel and the ongoing arrivals of undocumented migrants from North and West Africa. It has turned into a highly volatile, emotionally charged situation where a medical crisis is colliding head-on with local politics.
Part 6, a global health mobilization, connecting the dots.
So how are authorities planning to safely dismantle this incredibly risky situation? The Spanish government and the WHO have come up with a very strict three-step logistical plan to completely separate the passengers from the local public. First off, the ship is absolutely not docking near any residential areas. It is staying anchored out at sea. Second, the passengers will be ferried via secure transfer to a massive, isolated industrial port called Granadella. And finally, Step 3 guarantees zero local contact. The passengers will either be put immediately onto private charter flights to go back to their home countries, or if they are Spanish nationals, they'll be taken straight to Madrid for strict quarantine. It is a massive, highly synchronized operation.
Wrapping up this explainer, the saga of the MV Hondius leaves us with a pretty vital, lingering question about just how fragile our interconnected world really is. We just watched how a single isolated illness off the coast of Argentina spiraled into a multinational scramble stretching from West Africa all the way to the Canary Islands, dragging in maritime workers and sparking political protests along the way. The Andes strain is a harsh reminder that pathogens, well, they really don't care about borders, cruise itineraries, or local politics. So I'll leave you with this to think about. As we push further out to explore the most remote corners of our globe, have we actually learned the lessons of the past, or are we simply waiting for the next invisible passenger to board?